With the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Xu Yawen in Beijing. Coming up, we will have a half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's program, we'll delve into China's booming tennis economy as its athletes have made history at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. We will also examine the U.S. economy as Goldman Sachs raises the risk of a recession to 25%. Now let's begin with our top story. China is witnessing a booming tennis economy this summer as Chinese tennis players have made history at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. China's top-ranked tennis player Zheng Qinwen won the women's singles gold, while Zhizhen and Wang Xinyu claimed the silver medal in mixed doubles. These victories mark the country's best record in Olympic tennis history. The country's tennis market has witnessed a rapid development in recent years. Industry insiders suggest that the historic achievements of Chinese tennis players at the Olympics are expected to ignite interest in the sport, opening up a significant market for tennis training and equipment sales. For more on China's booming tennis market, we have Professor Chu Qiang, a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China, and Professor Zhang Gong from the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Gong, let me come to you first. With Zheng Qinwen winning the historic gold medal and Zhang Zhizhen and Wang Xinyu getting silver in mixed doubles, how do you think their outstanding performances will boost the growth of China's tennis economy?
Well, it's a great impetus for the development of the tennis industry and the sport itself among the peoples in China. That's for sure. I think this gold medal resoundingly says that people in Asia, people in China, can also compete on world scale and got the gold medal. And this is something to be proud of and something to be looked forward to by a lot of people.
Professor Chu, what's your take on it? I mean, given the recent surge in tennis enthusiasm, which areas of tennis market are likely to see the most significant growth shortly?
Well, actually, I'm very familiar with the tennis sports or an industry because ever since I was a kid, I am trained as a tennis player. Well, not a professional one, but more like accompanying the training with my cousin because my aunt and my cousin, they're professionals. They served in the club. So I think I'm quite familiar with this system. You have to know that in China, professional sports actually go with two different routes. Number one is what we call the whole nation system. For example, like diving, for example, like ping pong and the track and field. The reason why they have this kind of whole nation system, national team, provincial team, city team, so layer by layer of the selections of the players into, the national list and then go fight for the Olympic Games, is because those kind of the sports usually do not have more of the commercialization. For example, you cannot sell tickets to have a track and field, a club to sell tickets and then to support a lot of the private and, individual athletes to fight and, to go with a professional career. Well, ping pong, for sure, right now we can go this route. But before we achieve such kind of, popularity and, success in China, we still go through a long time in a whole nation system with the ping pong sport. So this is a whole other story. But right now we have more of the sport can go commercialized and also can go what we call the, a private player or individual player system or club system. For example, like tennis. Tennis actually do not have this kind of what we call the whole nation system. You organize a city tennis team, provincial tennis team, national tennis team, but more like, in each city, in each province, they have several dozens of the clubs. And all these tennis players, they are more like individual players. And they fight all kinds of the tournament to win their scores. And then they sponsor their own career. And after they have certain score, for example, ranking top of the nation, and then they will be invited to fight for the nation in the Olympic Games. And I think Zheng Qinwen actually is one of the most important representative, and also Li Na also as a representative of this kind of model. So I think with the success of then, I think, more of the clubs, private clubs and private or individual players will go into this field, and also with the commercialized table tennis club will become a trend.
So, Professor Gong, actually, before Zheng Qinwen won the women's singles gold, the number of tennis players in China had been growing dramatically. If we look at the data, it shows that in 2010, there were about 12 million tennis players in this country. Just a decade later, in 2021, the number had risen to nearly 20 million. And that's a dramatic increase of 66%. So how do you view the growing number of Chinese people playing tennis? How is this trend related to China's economic growth?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail right on the head. These kind of sports are usually associated with the higher levels of income at a national level. These sports are not like ping pong, you set up a table and you can play. It requires a bit of investment. I think there's a certain degree of commercialization in these sports. As China's national income per capita continues to increase, you're going to see more and more people starting to get into these sort of high-end sports. Tennis is one of the examples. For example, you look at snooker, right? You look at hockey, for example. I mean, hockey has been increasing very rapidly in China in popularity. So I think, this is a very natural phenomenon. I mean, you're going to see China as a powerhouse for these sports as years goes by. And you're going to see athletes from China really seriously competing on international stage with Western countries' athletes very quickly, I think, in a few more years. I think we're starting to see a breakthrough in tennis, and I won't be surprised that maybe in a few more years we're going to see more and more this kind of a breakthrough in many other sports, like skating, figure skating, for example, in ice hockey, for example, in those high-end games. And I think that's certainly going to happen.
Professor Chu, what's your take on it? The younger generation and also female population are more into their sports. What's your take on that?
Well, I think in my time when I was a junior, actually, this is more like a hobby. We do not have a very clear professional career path by playing tennis. I'm just a ladder player for sure, but my cousin, they and his teammate really want to do this, but without a professional industry. So basically, we have nowhere to go in the future. But right now, the whole thing is very different. We have a very professional club network. We have all kinds of the tournament, professional, competitions and rankings, and then commercial endorsement. So in the future, they can be a real career, especially for the females. This is actually a very fair competition playground. You can use your own strengths, your own personnel, your own training, your own technique to win the fame, to win the success, and win commercial endorsement. It's like Zheng Qinwen. Her family actually sponsored her with like 20 million of Chinese yuan, which is a very large, personal investment into the daughter's professional career. But also the reward is also very handsome. Right now, just this year, after the Olympic Games, herself actually has already got, more than 40 million Chinese yuan worth of, commercial endorsement, serves as a spokeswoman. I think this becomes a very good investment. Your whole career is very glorious, and also you got a very good economic income. So I think that will attract lots of talents get into this field. And I think not only tennis, but also I think ping pong, golf, and also horse riding, jockeys,
Yes.
All these kind of the club-based industry will also face a certain kind of what we call the professionalization or commercialization.
Well, speaking of that, actually, this is very interesting. When I was doing research, I found that even though China today is the second largest country globally in terms of tennis participation, accounting for about 20% of the world's total tennis population. However, Professor Chu, when it comes to tennis clubs, China has only 800, which is less than 1% of the global total. I mean, how do you assess this low percentage of tennis clubs?
Yes, because if you just want to be a tennis player for the healthy or sports fun purposes, well, it's going to be it's a very random and a cheap hobby. Well, not cheap, but very affordable hobby. For example, me, like in the weekend, I just book a court and I can play with my friend or even play some squash against a wall. Doesn't cost much of the time, training, or sports equipment, or all kinds of the fees. But if you want to go professional, if you want to join the club, that's a huge investment. Like what I mentioned, Zheng Qinwen is just a 1 in 10,000 of the winners in this kind of field. Lots of the training, lots of the tournament playing, and lots of the money gets involved. And if you want to have more club, you have to make sure this professional career path will be, wider and more successful. For example, it can accommodate more of the young players to achieve all kinds of levels of success. Because not everyone can win Olympic medals, but if you have all kinds of the league or competitions, that every level of the players can have their own level of success and a certain corresponding economic gains. And I think this whole career can accommodate and contain more of the players get into that. When that day comes, I think we're going to have more and more clubs to, be opened and join in the whole network, because the club is the cornerstone, every piece of the cornerstone of the professionalization and commercialization of this sport.
Professor Gong, we have also noticed that with the rising demand for tennis equipment and gear, major brands are increasingly targeting the Chinese tennis market. For instance, Adidas, it has announced a partnership with the Chinese Tennis Association, and also Antasfila has launched a plan to boost its focus on tennis and other sports. On top of that, tennis skirts have also become a popular fashion item, with brands like Miu Miu, Gucci, or Celine either introducing or incorporating tennis skirts elements into their products. So what opportunities does China's expanding tennis market present for sports brands and retailers, and how are they positioning themselves to capitalize on this trend?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be across the board. It's going to be about every aspect of the game, of the tennis game. You're talking about rackets, balls, payroll, jobs for coaches, clubs, opportunities, membership, everything. I mean, it's an entire industry. It's a commercialized industry. So it's going to create opportunities for a lot of businesses. It's just a boosting sports-related GDP, and it's a very good thing, I think.
Professor Chu, so given that tennis has traditionally been dominated by countries and regions like the United Kingdom, the Western Europe, Australia, and the United States, how do you think Chinese athletes winning Olympics medals in tennis will reshape or impact China's image on the global stage?
Well, I think for this year, I think Chinese sportsmen and women actually reshaped the sports field for many, many times, not only tennis, but also, in the swimming pool, in a track and field. Those areas are also presumably, dominated by, the Western developed nations. But right now, more and more Asian players, like Chinese players, has been entering it and also championed it. I think it shows that with economic development with one nation, well, the healthy status, nutrition status, as well as the equipment, technology, training, and also professionalization of the sports and the games will also go along and come up to a certain level. And I don't think the racial differences actually decided which kind of people can dominate which kind of the sports field, but more like, your training method, your technology, your investment, and, professionalization of the whole sports well decided how high and, how successful your nation or certain group of people can become.
I've been speaking with Professor Chu Qiang, a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China, and Professor Zhang Gong from the University of International Business and Economics. Let's take a short break. Coming up, Goldman Sachs says the chance of a U.S. recession in 2025 has increased. Welcome back. You're listening to Base Today. Goldman Sachs economists have recently raised their estimate for a U.S. recession in 2025 to 25%, up from 15% previously. The July employment numbers showed weak job creation and the highest unemployment rate since October 2021, which has raised the concerns about a potential economic downturn. The investment firm's research analyst said the risk of a recession in 2025 remains limited, but is rising. What contributes to the probability of a recession, and has the U.S. reached an economic turning point? I'm joined by Professor Zhang from the University of International Business and Economics, and Professor Chu Qiang, a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China. Professor Gong, Goldman Sachs has increased the probability of a U.S. recession from 15% to 25%. So what are the key factors contributing to this increased probability?
It's the unemployment number that is driving all of this. And in my opinion, I think it's still early to draw the conclusion that a recession is imminent. I think, if you look at the other indicators, I think there are still signs showing that the U.S. economy right now is fairly robust. As a matter of fact, I've been touring on the East Coast for the last 2 weeks. I'm actually currently in Orlando right now. I've been to a couple of shopping malls, and I see, the stores are very much packed. A lot of people in the shopping mall. The restaurants are packed. So I think it may be a little bit too early to draw the conclusion that the U.S. recession is coming. And even if there is indeed a recession, I think it's going to be a soft landing. The Fed is definitely going to decrease interest rates in September. So, and we'll also keep in mind that this is an election year, presidential election year. The Fed is going to, keep the economy not sinking too fast, I guess. So I think the jury is still out there at this moment.
Professor Chu, what's your take on that? I mean, how should investors adjust their strategies in light of the latest economic and employment data?
I think the current employment data actually showed some of the signs that worries us in the whole market. I think the storm rule has already been triggered, and in the past 50 or 60 years, every time when storm rule has been triggered, usually there is a recession coming after that. The reason why is that storm rule is actually a postponed indicator, which means when the bad employment situation has already been there for more than 3 months, and then this indicator will be triggered. So which means we have already seen some bad signs already. And I was in America for investigation just not long ago. And I find out, yes, the situation probably will be more worrying. I interviewed lots of the college graduates. They say this year is very, very difficult to, interview a decent job in a big company in an office. And most of the big companies, including the giant tech companies, has been reduced their plan for their enrollment, for the recruitment, and also for the wages. While most of the people flood into what we call the temporary jobs, like the Uber driver, like this waitress or waiters in the restaurant, yes, you can find dozens of it. They always recruit. And you can, if you want, you can hire like 3 or 2 jobs in a day and earn a lot of wages. But the bad sign is that the wage has been reduced, so they have to raise up the percentage of the tips. And also, we've been seeing that in the major cities. I'm not talking about the backwater places. I'm talking about Los Angeles. I'm talking about Boston, New York. The newly wedded couple, has been reduced. A lot of young people decided to postpone their wedding ceremony or marriage because they don't think the job situation is very stable. So I think all this are in line with the SOM rule and this indicator. So I'm afraid that the helicopter money in 2021 or 2022 has already been drained out. And the whole industry are losing its vitality. If you take like the Russell 1000 indicator, the small and medium-sized enterprise in America, actually after the 3 years, most of them are losing blood, are losing vitalities instead of being bigger and bigger like the Magnificent Seven. So I think the structural problem in American economy is there. And we cannot unsee it because the stock market, because of the NASDAQ, because of the Standard & Poor's are growing so rapidly. People paid all the attention to Magnificent Seven, but I don't think generally the most vast majority of American enterprises is in a healthy status. So that is something that really worries me in the long term.
Professor Gong, speaking of the decline in technology stocks in America, we have witnessed the downturn in U.S. tech stocks, including Apple, Nvidia, and Meta. So what impact did the decline in technology stocks of America have on global markets, particularly in Asia?
Well, I think it could be a combination of several reasons. One, for sure, is that the market is getting ahead of itself. There's too much exuberant expectation with respect to the prospect of the AI era, for example. And ultimately, I think the investors and the traders are looking for the earnings as solid proof that the stock price levels should be sustainable. And currently, we're seeing things short of that. I think secondly is just for, technical correction. I think a lot of investors and traders would like to take the money off the table. I mean, it's been a fairly fantastic run for the past couple of months, and the sky cannot be the limit, I guess. And, from a technical analysis perspective, the correction is expected. And I think the third reason is probably related to the fundamentals. I think, with the prospect of the Fed decreasing interest rate, dollars going to get weaker, and investors' appetite for dollar-denominated assets probably weakened a little bit. And these tech stocks, which have been widely held by investors, were probably the first wave of victims. So I think it's expected that the correction is coming. I don't think the latter scenario is more likely. I mean, look at what happened to the Nikkei index in the last few days. So one day it was a 12% jump, and the second day it bounced right back, right 10%. So I think we're probably into that stage that we were seeing the correction. But I still stick to my point that I don't think that the U.S. economy right now is rapidly getting into a recession. We still have to wait a little bit to make that conclusion.
Professor Chu, Professor Gong just mentioned about the Nikkei index, and according to Moody's Analytics, it says that the steep fall in the Nikkei index was driven by concerns about a potential U.S. recession and the Bank of Japan's interest rate hikes. Can you explain how these two factors exacerbated market panic?
Well, actually, you have to understand in the past, dozens of years, the whole international financial market logic is based on the Japanese yen liquidity. And I think that's the BOJ's rise up in interest rate actually serves as an acute and short-term stimulus for the landslide in the market. The reason why is that because of the burst of bubble in Japanese economy, so the Japan market actually lowered the interest rate to basically zero to counterfight the deflation in Japan. So Japanese yen becomes very, very cheap. You can borrow in Japanese yen with basically zero cost and then invest in anywhere else where you can just make money. For example, if you can borrow like Japanese yen with 0% of an interest rate and then put them into American banking sectors, you can immediately in the last year get 5% of the risk-free, interest rate gain in your pocket. Unless you are a fool, you probably would like to do that kind of trade for sure. So in the international market, many people try to borrow in Japanese yen and investing in anywhere else. For example, you can buy American stock, you can buy American T-bond, you can buy Japanese stock market, and etc. It's all perfectly a good business. But consider there's only one black hole in here. That is when Japanese yen started to get more expensive. Say you got to pay interest rate for that. Say when BOJ raised up the interest rate to like 2%, and when American Federal Reserve lowered their interest rate to like 2%, and then you immediately get nothing to earn. So people are afraid to see that situation. They try to dump what they have, the asset they bought by borrowing the Japanese yen, and then to clear the position immediately. So when everybody tried to rush toward the same goal and the whole market collapsed immediately. And secondly, about the recession in America, that serves like a long-term shadow over the Japanese stock market as well. Because you have to understand that in Japan, their economy, well, the real growth has not been seen in a very long time. Many of the Japanese big companies actually get their income from international markets, especially in America. For example, Sony, especially like Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi, Mitsuho, Sumitomo, all these companies, anything you name it, they have a huge existence and presence in American market. So when America started to slow down, Japanese big companies, all those kind of all-take-you, will actually slow down with their income, and therefore their stock price will also face a lot of pressures. I think based on this short-term and long-term shadows, that's the reason why we see the landslide of the the Nikkei index. But of course, you have to consider another big factors in here. That is the BOJ is already the largest stock owners owning the Tokyo Stock Exchange. More than 50% of the stock has already been bought by the Bank of Japan, and also America Federal Reserve have unlimited currency swap to support Japanese yen and the Central Bank of Japan. So I think they're going to pull lots of liquidity into this market to save the situation. See, today and yesterday, they have already saved the day to reverse the market into a normal situation to stop the panic.
I've been speaking with Professor Zhang, a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China, and Professor Zhang from the University of International Business and Economics. That's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Xu Yawen in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great weekend.